Hey everybody, this week on the Inktwell we're going to be taking a look at not one, but two pens from Russian manufacturer Benu. This is the Graceful Chameleon, and this one is the Blue Frost Briolette. So let's go ahead and unbox these two pens and take a look. So as you can see, the packaging is not the flashiest, but it does the job well. Each of the pens comes in a nondescript cardboard box with a paper sleeve with Benu gold leaf stamped. Underneath that, we do have the care and use guide that comes with virtually every pen you buy nowadays. And below that, we have shredded paper to provide a little bit of extra padding for shipping and things of that nature, which honestly works really well. So let's go ahead and put the boxes aside and take a look at the rather flashy nature of these two pens, starting with the Blue Frost Briolette. This pen features aluminum flake under the clear coat along with multiple shades of blue, and it has a very good size. As you can see, it fits about medium to medium long length, and with how the facets are done, they're actually pretty comfortable in the hand instead of being rough or very off-putting. Now, there is one thing with the Briolette that must be mentioned, and that is this drop down from the body to the section. The one thing that the Briolette does have going for it there, though, is that is such a large section that it actually makes for a good writing experience and allows you to vary your grip to make use of this shorter Schmidt nib that comes with the Briolette. And when we open it up, you can see the Schmidt converter that does come with it. This one happens to be inked up because I've been using these pens quite a bit. So overall, not a bad body design for an $80 pen, but let's take a look at the Chameleon now and see how it compares. So the Benu Graceful Chameleon has an interesting dark green to purple fade, and the purple's kind of that metallic purple that you used to see a lot in the late 1990s. It has a triangular facet design to it, which is either a good thing or a bad thing depending on who you are. And as far as length goes, it's about the same as the Briolette, both capped and uncapped, even though the cap does look really large once you get it off the pen. Now, this one does also have a rather significant step down, but the placement of the step down makes it less obtrusive than that of the Briolette. As you can see, the section is far ahead of the threads, and once you actually get the pen in your hand, that step down is perfectly between your fingers and the webbing of your hand, which makes it really nice. Also going for this pen is the cap. You can see it's on there really tight, and that has a lot to do with this little notch in each of the triangular facets. If you look closely there, you can see where I'm pointing. Once I rotate it a little bit here, you can see that notch that makes this cap very sturdy when you post it. So if you do have much larger hands, this pen does accommodate that quite well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the writing sample with both of these pens. We are using the Endless Works Tomoe River Paper Notebook and Diatramentis Atlantic Blue ink, which is going to be in the Graceful Chameleon, and Diatramentis Sky Blue ink, which is in the Briolette. Now, these two inks do behave quite differently from each other, but the nibs themselves are actually almost spot on, which is why I've been using them for comparisons. But let's go ahead and start the writing sample with the Briolette. So all in all, we get a pretty good line from this medium nib. This particular ink isn't a shader, it's not a sheener. It's pretty straightforward, but this medium nib does allow for a lot of it to get onto the paper. It's got good flow, good feed, and that's one of the things I really like about Schmidt compared to like Bach. And as we do the upside down and right side up sample, you can see that we're going to be getting a lot of line variance here. I will say that writing upside down, this particular nib had a little bit of tooth to it. Okay, a little bit of tooth is an understatement. It was extremely toothy. So with this particular nib, if you were trying to write on substandard paper that tends to tear away, that would not be a good experience at all. But you do get some really nice line variance there. And you can actually see how this ink tends to behave in a drier nib, which once you turn it upside down, it does help inhibit that flow. So let's go ahead and finish off the writing sample with our friend the Lazy Dog, as well as a little bit of a demonstration of the softness of this particular nib, which is kind of surprising in such a small steel nib. One thing I wanted to show you really quick before we talked about the softness on the nib, look at that slight dry spot on the Y. That has more to do with how I was writing with it a little bit at a steeper angle than the pen itself. That's actually one of the first times I've had that happen, so definitely user error there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the softness of this nib really quick. Now, I'm not actually applying that much pressure. It may look it, but my hands do tend to shake a little bit more when I'm slowing down. And that's really what's causing the shaking, not me trying to jab the pen through the paper. But let's go ahead and take a look now at the Graceful Chameleon and its writing sample. Now, this is what I was talking about when I said there was a difference between the two inks, even though the nibs are pretty much spot on with each other. With Sky Blue, it's a little drier. With Atlantic Blue, it's a pretty wet ink. Now, in a broad nib, that smear would be going all the way off the paper from where I started it. But with this medium nib, it is more controlled because it does help to tame a much wetter ink. So there we've got the writing sample, and you can really see that consistency between these two medium Schmidt nibs when you've got them side by side like this, even with two different inks. So final thoughts on these two Benu pens. When you look at them side by side, I really do prefer at least the feel of the Briolette. The look is a little gaudy with the overdone aluminum flake, but they do have different color schemes. And with how this section is done, I really like it, and the tapers do fit in the webbing of my hand a lot better than the triangular taper of the Graceful Chameleon. And overall, for $80, it's a nice package, and one that I think you'd be really happy with if you were to pick up that particular pen. So the Briolette's definitely going to get an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10 for me. Really, I'm only marking down points because of the overdone aluminum flake on this particular body. So maybe if I had gotten a different one, it may rate an 8.5 or a 9, but that's where I'm going to put this particular one because of that flake. Now, looking at the Graceful Chameleon, this one is a little harder to judge. I love how it's got the green fading into the purple. They did a much better job on the aluminum flake compared to the Briolette. But where it loses me, and this is kind of a big one here, is that triangular taper overall creates a weird feeling experience for the webbing of my hand. And for some people, that's something they're not going to notice. For me, though, because it's sitting right there and there's nothing else keeping my hand from noticing that feel, and even though the body is nice and smooth and it does fit firmly into my hand, that step down along with the triangular taper is just something that mentally I can't get over when I'm using this pen. And for a $100 pen, that's a little too much mental block for me to actually consider that one to be as good of a deal. So I've got to rate it about a 6.5 to 7.5 because of those drawbacks with the actual body design itself. Now that being said, you may be a fan of this triangular taper, and with that, it may fit really well in your hand, and it may improve your fit as well. With how I hold the pen, it just doesn't do it for me. So if we reevaluate the score and get rid of the vanity points that I knocked off for that triangular taper, they actually both rate about the same at about an 8 to an 8.5. If I have to pick a favorite though, I'm gonna give it to the Briolette. I like this body style a lot more than the Graceful Chameleon, and I think that if you were to take the colorway from the Chameleon and put it on the Briolette, you'd have a perfect pen. All in all though, depending on your writing style and grip, both of these make really good options. And if you want to take a look at all the colorways and all the different options, head on over to penchalet.com, click on that radio podcast link at the top of the page, and enter Ink12 so you can at least get 10% off the price of the pen, along with that free shipping for all orders over $50 in the continental United States. So if you liked this video with comparison of the Graceful Chameleon and Briolette, click that like button. If you didn't like it, well, you know what to do. Either way, subscribe to the channel, follow the channel on Twitter and Instagram at the Ink12, and support the channel over at patreon.com/theink12. Also, click that Discord link down below so you can join the conversation for this and 2 Guys Zero Planners. That's it for this one. I'll see you next week.